Further attendance of the meeting by any member of the city council, city staff, or public at the regular meeting location is the city council chambers is not feasible due to the COVID-19 pandemic and closure of City Hall to members of the public. As a result of the foregoing, the city council meeting will be conducted solely by telephone or other electronic means as provided in the Minnesota statute 13D.021. And no in-person meeting will be conducted in the city council chambers. I think it is important to recognize that using a video conference is different than in person, but it is necessary. Under the circumstances, we are doing the best we can to maintain transparency and due process. I would appreciate everyone's patience and cooperation as we work through the meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America,
and to
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Seeing that this meeting is being held remotely, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Councilmember Balsonic.
Here.
Councilmember Brox.
Here.
Councilmember Fulch.
Here.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Here.
Councilmember Lund.
Here.
And Councilmember Vaughn.
Here.
Let the roll reflect that all council members are present and a quorum has been established. We will now have the approval minutes. Council members, are there any corrections to the minutes from special meeting on November 13th and the workshop and the regular meeting of November 16th? Seeing none, they are approved. Comments from the audience. For public comments, we have options for comments to be mailed prior to the meeting, as well as an interactive feature during the meeting. For the emailed comments, they have been forwarded to the City Council and their receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that items not on this agenda will not be discussed this evening. We ask that the attendees use the raised hand feature and they will be invited to speak one at a time. I also want to remind everyone that the public comments period is not intended for an extended dialogue. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the council at this time? Okay, I see no one. Councilor, are there any items to be considered?
Your Honor,
Councilmember Fulch.
I'd like to pull from the consent agenda, item number 8 on the furnace, the fire department.
Okay. And we will place that under administration. Okay. Council, with that taken out, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Councilmember Brox
Second.
and Councilmember Vaughn. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Councilmember Brox.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Tonight we have a public hearing. For this item, we will have an introduction by our city administrator, Dan Waticha, followed by a public hearing. Any potential action will be a future meeting. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Give me a second to what the presentation. And you should see it there.
Yes.
This evening, we have our Truth and Taxation meeting. The general purpose of it is to present the proposed 2021 budget to the public, absolutely to receive any comments from the public. Do want to note that it is not the purpose to address property market values. That's a process that occurs through the county during the spring. Also want to note that following the hearing, the council's next step would be at the council's regular meeting on December 21st, when you will be asked to adopt the final budgets, levies, and capital improvement, capital equipment plans. The budget is a process. It started with a workshop with the city council back in mid-May, followed through with one-on-one meetings myself and department heads, group meetings with all of the senior staff, all-day meeting with the finance committee. We had a couple of other city council workshops, including one just a couple of weeks ago in mid-November, other finance committee meeting. In September, the council did adopt the preliminary budget and levy, which is still the overall basis for what you're going to see this evening. Based on the preliminary numbers, the county does send out estimated tax impact notices to residents. Tonight is our truth and taxation hearing, and as noted, in a couple of weeks would expect that the council would adopt the final budget and levy. Do want to point out that although these are things that we address every year, this year was a bit extra attention to some basic principles about making sure that we're providing our services, that we're realistic about anticipated revenues, particularly in a challenged economy, that we're maintaining reserves for fiscal uncertainty, which we're certainly experiencing in 2020 and 2021. We're also putting a great emphasis on maintaining our assets, whether they're buildings or street, sewer, water, trail infrastructure, and making sure that we're maintaining those. And as with all things, we do emphasize our core values of communication, optimal service, respect for resources, and enthusiasm. A quick thumbnail summary of what's in the budget. We're holding or proposing to hold the tax levy rate the same as in 2020. With that, it means essentially holding operating expenditures the same as in 2020. We are projecting a 2.5% cost of living adjustment for employee wages. That's largely driven by negotiations with several unions and comparisons with neighboring cities. We are also, we have gotten quotes for increased health insurance premiums. One of the pieces that's prioritization is always an emphasis, but a little bit treated differently this year is how we're prioritizing our capital projects, our capital improvement plan, capital equipment plan, and actually only moving forward with specific projects when we know that there's money available. So the prioritization is certainly important so that we make sure we use the money for the best bang for the buck in most important areas. We have a neighborhood infrastructure project included in the budget, and that will be bonded for. We have the first phase of upgrading police and fire radios in the budget, and that'll ensure interoperability with departments within the city as well as with other departments throughout the Dakota County. We're also purchasing a new fire engine that is through an internal loan and is replacing a 1986 engine, so certainly due. Other two projects that want to point out that are in the budget are Highway 316 and the City Hall Dome. Both of those are being accomplished because of significant funding through the state of Minnesota's bonding bill. A couple of things that are not in the budget: no new personnel, no increased hours. We also, as mentioning with the prioritization of our capital projects, we've set this up so we're not relying on local government aid. And that's based on earlier in that process. It started way back in May. A lot of uncertainty about what the economy looks like, what the state budget looks like, and its ability to provide funding to the city of Hastings. So we set it up so that only if there's LGA, then we'll go back and look at that priority list for what projects might be afforded. Some very recent, last Monday, some very recent good news from the state. Their budget forecasts are looking very favorable. Fully expect that we'll be getting about $400,000 in local government aid here in late December. And although it would have to go through legislative processes while they work on their budget, it certainly looks like LGA is safer than it was just a couple of weeks ago. The state's economy is looking much healthier than it had been. But obviously, we know that there's still difficulties, primarily due to the pandemic. These are the big numbers, the key numbers for our budget. As noted, in 2021, we are proposing to keep the tax rate at 57.391%, the same as in 2020. So holding that line. Because of growth in our tax base, whether that's new development as well as appreciation of property values, we are projecting or proposing a 3.54% increase in the levy itself. And the question we always get is, what is 1%? It's about $153,000, so I'll put that there. This slide, I think, really explains the way that the tax rate and the amount of the levy are correlated and work together. The red line declining from left to right is the tax rate. And as you can see, over the last several years, we've fairly steadily had that tax rate decrease and have less of a burden on our taxpayers. And on the far right, you'll see that we're holding it the same between 2020 and 2021. A big part of why we've been able to have that decrease in the rate is the bars are the tax capacity, or essentially the tax base. So as properties have been built or appreciated in value, they help us spread that the amount of the taxes across more property, more value. So that's the green line. The actual amount of the levy, we've been able to have a slow increase, even though we've had a decreasing tax rate. Had a couple of slides shared with me just the other day, which I thought were really interesting and wanted to include in here, even though I don't think you've seen these before. This is on residential homestead properties, so single-family homes or townhomes throughout Dakota County. And Lakeville, Hastings, a little bit to Burnsville. I'm sorry, Vermillion Township's cut off, so I'm not sure what their number is. But 3 of us actually have a decrease in the average total tax for residential properties. And Burnsville is almost at a 0. So 2 of us have a decrease, Lakeville and Hastings. The others are all increasing from 0.01% to a high of over 8% increase in those those average residential property taxes. So that really does show we've been holding the line, taking advantage of the growth in our property values, and not using that as a means to increasing the taxes, but just keeping that rate the same or decreasing in recent years. Here's the same map on commercial properties excluding TIF districts. We don't have quite the same decrease because of changes in valuations of the commercial properties, but we're still in that more favorable spot at a 0.34% increase, where some others might be seeing a decrease, but certainly some others, Egan at over 4%, South St. Paul at over 5%, are seeing increases in those commercial property taxes. So it's nice to graphically be able to see when we're doing a good job. Do want to note a couple of specific pieces of our budget. The long-term capital planning, when sat down with staff early on, they came up with over $17 million of proposed projects. And I think that they're all important, but obviously some are more important or more urgent than others, or a higher priority. So that's the key piece to our putting that prioritization in place. Is we can't do all of them. When we do start ticking them off the list, let's make sure we're tackling the ones that are the highest priorities and most important. In the budget itself, we're proposing about $7.6 million worth of projects already, based on some carry forward funding, some budgeted resources, bonding, as I mentioned, for the neighborhood project, internal loan for the fire truck. So there certainly is a lot in the budget itself, but still close to $9.5 million that we'll be viewing throughout the year as money becomes available. We'll see it in a few weeks here when believe that the state will come through with some LGA here at the end of December. Other projects that I wanted to make sure we highlight, because they're not ones that we typically have, is the support through the state bonding bill. Although it's balanced at $2 million of revenue, $2 million of expense, we do have the City Hall Dome project in the budget. Did not want to overlook that. We are still waiting, although we have spoken with the state, we are still waiting on the actual paperwork. And until that comes, we're a bit handcuffed and don't want to be proceeding with work with an architect until we know for certain what the parameters of the funding are and make sure it can pay for that architect. So do anticipate that project proceeding as we are able to work with the state. The other one is Highway 316, a significant project that had a $1.5 million gap between state and local funding, and between MnDOT and local funding, and the state was able to come through with the bonding bill to fill that gap. Still working out some details. You'll see that coming several times over upcoming city council agendas as we work out some of the agreements to make that happen. Anticipated being bid, I think, around March or April, so that it could be constructed in one season and completed by late fall of 2021. Next steps, in about 10 seconds here as I wrap up, we'll open to the Truth and Taxation hearing, as well as a chance for council members to ask any questions or give some direction. And then in 2 weeks, depending on whatever changes there might be based on tonight's discussion, in 2 weeks, we will have the final budget recommended for adoption, as well as approval of the property tax levies. We'll also see utility rates, fee schedule, capital improvement plans in order to finalize the process. With that, I could stand for any quick questions from the council, and obviously the big piece we're here for is the public hearing for the truth and taxation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. At this point, I will open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, use the raised hand emblem. I see no one in the audience with a raised hand. One more time, anyone wish to speak on the public hearing of the truth and taxation portion of this meeting? Okay, I see no raised hands. At this time, I will close the public hearing. Council, is there any discussion?
Your Honor, it's Dan.
Okay, Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to give a quick update on two issues for the council to be aware of. At our last discussion, where we went over everything that Dan had just discussed, when we had talked about Highway 316 and Mayor Mary had said, Commissioner Slavic had indicated that the county is still interested in helping with the gap funding, that we still have a gap between what the state, through the state bonding, and then the MnDOT grants and what the city is going to be able to provide. And so Commissioner Slavic just briefed me right before our council meeting that the county, that looks like they're going to approve up to $1.5 million of contingency funding to help with the Highway 316. Although I think he said it was closer to about a $500,000 gap, but so they wanted to make sure that they had sufficient enough funds to be able to cover that, which is just absolutely terrific news. Very pleased, and thank you, Commissioner Slavic, for that. And then the second issue was during the committee on utilities, which is myself, Councilmember Lund, and Councilmember Balsanic. We had been discussing negotiating with or approaching the county and asking them for consideration in helping with. The city has been in compliance with the county's solid waste management plan, and we're actually one of the shining stars in our county in helping to meet these goals in compliance. And so Commissioner Slavic also provided an update. Originally, when discussions had been had with staff, they were talking about providing a grant directly to the city. But what they have been discussing more recently has been providing up to $25 per ton, but that money would go to the waste haulers to help bring down the costs to our residents. And so we're hoping maybe that would have assisted directly with budget issues, but Commissioner Slavic had said that that's the direction that they're going at this point, just so that we're all aware of that. And then the last thing I just wanted to bring up was during the last few months, we've had about the fire department within the public safety committee of the council, and where we had appointed John Townsend, to be our new fire chief. And so in those deliberations, it was smaller group meetings with Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Liefeld. We had a lot of discussion about how the chief had brought forward, his number one priority was making sure that he was being able to have staff properly allocated to be able to have good coverage. And something that had been in within the budget for the last couple of years was doing a personnel study. And so as Dan had mentioned through the prioritization process, that all the studies had been given a D ranking. And so what's in our capital improvement project is that there's two studies that have been coupled together, the fire department and then also a facilities study. and they're both given a D category. And I would just like to again advocate that we support the fire department and making that a higher priority so that when if funding starts to come through, that we are helping to support our new fire chief. And clearly he is looking for the council's support in backing him and finding staffing resources. And then secondly, when it comes to, facilities, I think that that's also really important. And I think something that is clear to me is that perhaps we need to have more focus on facilities planning, particularly like when we look at the consent agenda for this evening. The item that I had pulled was that in this last fiscal year, the two furnaces at the fire department died. And that they're at the end of their life expectancy of 31 years or something to that effect. And so they finally died. And I think that, that to me, that's a red flag if we're letting furnaces actually get to the point where they just they just keel over. And as we were going through the finance discussions in regards to, City Hall, just okay, so this is my perspective. And my perspective has been in regards to the City Hall dome is that we didn't have a staff person that was really championing that issue. It wasn't even on the CIP list, for 2020, which I was just mind boggled when that was brought to our attention. And so I think that we do need to have, greater emphasis on facilities planning. And so I don't think that, I think that those two things are really a high priority, and we can't sit on our hands and just twiddle our thumbs and hope that we get enough funding to be able to go through and move forward on those. I don't think that they're I don't think that they're a D category whatsoever. When we clearly, when the fire chief is saying that his number one priority is making sure he has staffing resolved. And then secondly, when we continue to see some red flags when it comes to our facilities planning and how that's moving forward. So those are my comments on the budget. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Any, Dan Waticha?
Thanks. I just figured quicker to answer on a couple of those pieces before we went off on all the comments. Should have been more clear on a couple of changes between what we discussed on November 16th and this evening, a couple of weeks later. At that meeting, there were, I noted 3 proposals by council members that did not have a whole lot of pushback or questioning or anybody saying, no, don't do that. Didn't have a whole lot of consensus endorsement for it, but took the lack of resistance as consent. So 3 changes between 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago and today. One mentioned the explicit placement of the dome project and the $2 million from the state bonding bill, making sure that it is indeed in the budget. 2, as Councilmember Fulch brought up, the fire department study. So there's $20,000 in this budget proposal tonight already. The third was $5,000 for the loop bus, essentially an opportunity to give them funding for several months, 6 months, so that they had some time to plan. So those 3 that were not in the budget during the workshop in November are in there this evening. So wanted to point those out. Should have had that more clear in the presentation leading up to this, or the cover memo. The other piece want to point out, just adding information on all the great things with Dakota County. I glossed over it by saying we're still working through details with MnDOT and Dakota County. The way that the state bonding bill works is our $1.5 million basically needs to be fronted locally and put into the project fund. And then as the project's completed, that gets paid back by the state bonding bill. So there's this cash flow issue that we're really not in a position to handle. We were looking at a couple of ways we might work with that, but it looks like Dakota County is likely to approve a 2 or 3 part agreement so that they would front that $1.5 million so that as the project's progressed and reimbursed by the state bonding bill, it takes that cash flow issue off of the city. So great assistance there again from Dakota County. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Discussion, any other council discussion? No discussion. Okay, that was actually just for an update. No vote is required. So at this time, we will move on to community development. We have a resolution for the industrial park land credit and sale for Simply Secure Storage, 2030 Spiral Boulevard. And for this item, we will have an introduction by Community Development Director, John Hinsman. John, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I'm going to share my screen here and go through a presentation of what we're looking at here tonight. The proposal that we have before you, here it is the potential sale of a lot within the industrial park. The lot is here. It's 2030 Spiral Boulevard. It's about a 2.5 acre lot. And this would be to Simply Secure Storage, Chad Smarava. You may recall that Mr. Smarava had another industrial park purchase directly to the south where he did a similar type of project last year. The expansion project went well on Lightbourne and 31st Street. He is now seeking to acquire another site for additional mini storage. So we're looking at 2 items tonight per the resolution. One is the preliminary approval of a land credit for property acquisition. As council is aware, we have a land credit program for the sale of industrial park property that reduces the price of the property itself based upon certain elements, increase in the land value and employment. And when we take a look at the site itself and what those credits add up to, we've got a property market value of about $1.54 a square foot, estimated building value of about $1.2 million. So the construction credit of $121,000. You put that into the formula, it reduces the land price to about $52,000. You may recall that on some industrial park transactions, there is no money that is due at sale. Some there are. And in this case, there would be $52,000 coming into the Hedra account for the sale of this property. The property would look something like this. The concept plan looks like this. We've got 4 storage buildings, about 40,000 square feet altogether, subdivided between business storage and mini storage. This is a concept plan. It will need to go through site plan approval, get the architecturals and the landscape civil design for this. And this would be a separate approval that would be necessary for transfer of the property. As far as what the property would look like itself, this is a picture of the existing site that's under construction at Lightbourne and 31st Street. And I thought I had another slide on there, but I guess not. Before we have you tonight is to approve the attached resolution, which is the preliminary land sale. What this does is this lays out the steps that need to be taken in order for the property to be transferred, setting that payment of $52,000, remaining in business for at least 5 years, obtaining the land use approvals, which would include site plan and special use permit approvals. And so this would be the list of things that would be necessary to do, and that would be the action that we ask for you to consider tonight. In the audience, I do believe we have Mr. Smarava, if you have any questions for him. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Any council discussion? No, Councilmember Bolsonic.
Yeah, Your Honor, I'll move to approve.
Okay, thank you. And
Second, Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld, a second.
And then I just have a quick question, Your Honor, for John. This is not germane to the article before us, but what is the percentage of the vacant land out in the industrial park now?
Council member, as far as the total acreage we have available, we probably have about 60 to maybe 70 acres left. We have a very large piece of about 55 acres that's available for subdivision. And then we have a handful of 1 to 2 acre lots, probably 3 or 4, about 4 or 5 of those altogether. So that's what we have remaining within the park.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a motion. Any other discussion, council? Okay, seeing no questions, Clerk Flatten, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Member Brax,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. We will move into administration where item number 8, the approval of the unbudgeted expense of the fire department furnace. And Dan, could we have you speak to that, please?
Sure. Our purchasing policy, as presently written, requires that unbudgeted items over $5,000 need to be brought to the city council. We, a couple of weeks ago, had a furnace, $6,800 to replace it, labor and materials and labor. Fail, it was about 30 years old and at the end of its life, and essentially an essential component that needed to be replaced, couldn't just be gone without. As discussed earlier under a different topic, it was not planned or budgeted for, but sometimes these things you have to still address surprises. Fortunately, it does appear that it's something that the fire department can absorb within its existing budget without needing additional funds. But at the same time, it was not explicitly planned as a capital purchase. So am bringing it here per our purchasing policy.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Does that answer your questions, Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Mayor Fassbender. Yes, it does. And I just wanted to raise the attention to the issue. You know, when 4 years ago, when I came onto the council, it was, brought to my attention. Councilmember Liefeld and I were at a League of Minnesota Cities event where we ended up talking to a vendor who had informed us that a facilities condition assessment had been done, and so that was new information to us. And then after, we found out that there were some issues with that assessment that had been done, where the staff weren't very happy with some of the results, and so just. And then again, the comments that I had made earlier about how there was a study, that's been planned, to be addressed, but it has such a low level right now. And I guess I'm just concerned about, facilities planning and how that's getting incorporated into the budgetary process. Something else I've noticed when I've been looking at the city's organizational chart is that, there's the department heads that obviously go to the city administrator, but then facilities is kind of off on its own when you look at the organizational chart. And so it just begs the question, okay, if it's not a department head that facilities falls under, how is that really, actively getting managed? And like the comments I made before about no one was really advocating for the dome and the city hall things that are needed. And so, so just, for food for thought, it's, I just think that it's a super important issue, and making sure that it's given the attention and need that it should properly have. And so I don't have, answers to that question what I'm trying to bring or highlight as a potential problem, but I really hope that we can put some focus on this particular issue, and that a study is brought forward so that it's resolved and we don't have things unexpectedly, dying at the end of their life cycle like that. And maybe it's a small purchase. It's only, not $7,000, but to have two of them fail exactly at the same time within the same fiscal year. And if it was something larger, like what else is out there that could potentially be ready to, die, be at its end of its life cycle. And that's when things get super expensive, it's when things are left unto themselves for too long. And then you have the emergency situation where they need repair. So enough said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Any other discussion, council? I would look for a motion to accept this unbudgeted item. for the
I'll make
fire
the motion.
department. Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Lund. Any other discussion? If not, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brax,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that part that motion prevails as well. Council, any discussion? Or I'm sorry, any announcements? Okay, I have a couple. We have a holiday.
Oh, Mayor,
Wait.
wait. We-
Yes,
We did have an announcement.
Yeah, you kind of breezed through that one really fast.
well,
So,
you.
apparently the mayor's turning 29.
again.
Happy birthday,
again.
Mayor.
Birthday.
Thank
Birthday,
you.
Mayor.
Oh, Mark, that's a classic.
Birthday.
What?
I like that. I didn't even get a birthday cake. My husband's out of town, so thank you all.
Happy
It's fun
birthday.
It's fun having a birthday. I love being a year older, closer to retirement.
What's your favorite cake?
One Marquette. It's good.
Yeah. A 0-calorie cake. Carrot cake. What else?
Oh.
Anyway, thank you very much. It's been
Happy
a great
birthday.
day.
Mayor Fassbender,
Yes.
I had a council concern.
Okay.
Before you go into your announcements, other than wishing you a happy birthday. What I wanted to bring as a council concern is now that we're going in deep into the second phase of COVID, is I would like to see some council discussion about contingency planning as we're moving forward. And I don't know if, and I'm opening this up for conversation, if we want to have a full council conversation about planning, and or if we want to make it our task force, our COVID economic task force, to have these conversations. But I just think that it's important that we talk about communication structure to our business community and being able to maintain conversations with them about what their needs are, and then as the state and federal government begin to make hopefully some funds available, how it is that we can communicate with them. As we went through the first phase, I heard from business owners who aren't members of the chamber. And so it was new news to them sometimes to hear of things because they're not in touch with, chamber newsletters and things of that nature. And so just to talk more about just a communications plan and how it is that we can work with them and do some contingency planning, because I just heard on MSNBC the other day, they were saying that they think that January and February will be the worst public health crisis our country has ever faced. So I think we're going into deep, and I think that we just need to be prepared for how it is we're going to roll forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Any discussion with that, council? Okay. Councilmember Liefeld.
Question on that, Councilmember Fulch, are you, making a statement, which I completely agree with. Are you thinking that we need to have a committee together for that, or what was your goal here?
Sure, thanks. Well, I know that we all care a lot about our community, right? And so that's why I wasn't sure if we as a council wanted to talk about it as a whole. I know sometimes it's hard when we have deliberations when it's the whole group. But we did have a working group, which was a smaller task force, which was myself, Councilmember Lund, and Mayor Fassbender. And then a few of the community representatives such as Christy Bars of the chamber. And then, oh my goodness, why do I
John
always,
Hinsman.
Bruce, yes.
Oh,
Yeah, and John Hinsman, obviously, and Dan. And so I just think that it would be timely to make sure that we're beginning these conversations. I think that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better.
Councilmember Lund.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I don't see a reason why we couldn't find another time to get together, that same group. I mean, I don't think the group has been suspended or anything like that. So if you wanted to call a meeting, I would imagine that everybody on that group would be fine to get together at any point in time.
Sure.
We can do that offline, but yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Liefeld.
Anyone else feel that this might be or should be an excellent topic for one of our workshops? I mean, I'd like to participate. I think this is something as a whole that we could spend some time talking about. So, I mean, I'm just curious what others think.
Sure. I think it's appropriate to have a full council discussion. I was just looking at our future calendar. Okay. It will have to be in the beginning of the next year then, because we do have a December 21st workshop. So if that is okay to pull it out to then, Dan, I don't have a schedule of a workshop in the first week of January. And then council member Fox will be on board as well after that, possibly. So, Dan, yes?
Two things. One, recognize my first comment's going a different direction from full council, but do want to point out that HEDRA is the city's economic development arm, and you've got an existing body from that standpoint that can potentially address some of the concerns. The other quick question, I might look foolish here on the TV land, but what workshop's on the 21st? My calendar missing? Just somewhere, we might be able to do it in 2 weeks instead of waiting till January is what I'm getting at.
I had something about the budget, but possibly not.
Okay.
It could have been
It might have been a preliminary.
yes, and then,
Okay. So conceivably, we could do a council workshop on the 21st if that works for everybody.
council, is that your wish? Perfect. Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you. Now, any other comments? Councilmember Vaughn? No? Okay. Councilmember Lund?
Yeah, could we have, is that set in stone, or are we just looking for the 21st as a potential time frame for something like that? Because I'm not entirely sure what the agenda would look like. And just for a whole group to get together to talk about something for the sake of everybody being in on the conversation, but there's nothing really pressing to talk about, would be a waste of time. So not to say that there's nothing to talk about, but if we don't have some, specific, either, content or people to bring in that can bring some additional context to the conversation, December 21st might be a tough time to get some other people in the room, just, with holidays and so forth. I guess before I agree to meet as a workshop, I'd really like to understand what the whole agenda would look like, because I want to make sure it's a really useful time.
Okay, agreed. Thank you.
So we can figure this out
Okay.
offline, because we only need a few days notice or whatever. But I guess that's more to Dan. If we are going to put something together as a whole group, who's going to be there, what's the agenda, and is it maybe better suited a handful of weeks later because we'll have more information to work with or whatever. But
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Balsanic.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have to agree with Councilmember Lund. I mean, we have the State Department of Health with their briefings that come out, every other day or every day. We have the governor's office. We have the executive branch exerting emergency powers and so forth. We can just take the lead from there and see how things go. I think the only thing that's really up in the air from everything that I'm seeing is who gets the vaccine first. And, it's going to be the health workers, then they're going to go with the folks in the nursing homes. And from there, I think from a city standpoint, I see us trying to get the fire department, EMS folks, and the police department inoculated. But otherwise, we're looking into a crystal ball. We just don't know. So I don't see any reason to get anything set up. I could see maybe putting it on the radar, that we should think about it for January or February when it's getting bad. But what can we do? We tell people to wear masks. We tell people to practice good hygiene with their hands and their breathing and so forth. Only go out for essential things. I just see this as being kind of superfluous. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Balsanic.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Fulch.
Sure. To answer his question, I think that that's why I was suggesting it perhaps to be the smaller task force, is just to do more of that brainstorming about really what is it that we need to have, put in place and start to be doing that contingency planning, so that we have a communications plan for how it is that we're going to reach out to, our business community and proactively provide them information. How are we going to glean what their status is and what their needs are of us, as some of us have worked more closely with the business community in this first round, and to have that open dialogue with the chamber and then the Downtown Business Association. I know that the Downtown Business Association has just recently reached out and asked for some assistance with communications already. I was down there doing my small Saturday shopping and talked to some of the board members, and they indicated that, yeah, they're bracing and they're really scared. And so I think that it's super important to make sure that our business community knows that we're there to support them and that we want to stand up and we want to work proactively with them, and so that we don't get behind the 8 ball and then we're struggling to keep up. And so we know that the train is coming, boys and girls, and we need to be prepared for it. I think that it's going to be worse than the first round, and I surely hope that I'm wrong. But as I've been saying all along, these things come in waves of 3, and this is the second wave. And we knew it was coming, and so just to make sure that we're doing good communications, planning, with our community, and what else do we need to know? I know that some of the county commissioners are already beginning to do outreach, so to communicate what are the county's plans for distribution and things of that nature. So I think that there's plenty to talk about and start to get our ducks in a row again and be ready to go. So when it does hit the fan and it is really bad, that we're prepared. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. I'll reach out to Christy, and John and I can have a conversation on it as well for a date and time. Thank you. Okay, we said it. We have a holiday light recycling drop-off running through December 30th. Dakota County residents can drop off their unwanted light stands at the Joint Maintenance Facility, 920 West 10th Street. Show us how you shine. So if you are decorating your home or business with outdoor lights this holiday season, please consider sharing a picture for all to see. Photos will be shared at the city website, social media, and placed on a map for a self-guided drive-by tour. This is not a contest. just a chance to have fun. Meetings coming up Tuesday, tomorrow, December 8th, 7 p.m. Park and Recs Commission will be meeting. Thursday, December 10th at 6 p.m. Hedgerow will meet. Monday, December 14th, 7 p.m. the Planning Commission will be meeting. Tuesday, December 15th, 7 p.m. Heritage Preservation Commission. And Monday, December 21st, the City Council has a regular meeting. With that, I would look for a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Brox, Councilmember Liefeld, and no discussion on the floor. So Clerk Flatten, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Yep.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brax,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Thank you all.